Okay, so here's our agenda for today. First of all, we're going to have our welcome and general business and then also our member announcements. So in a few minutes, I'll get to a slide here where we'll have our member announcements, and that'll give anybody that wants to make an announcement an opportunity to speak up. And then you can also post your announcement on our LinkedIn user group forum. And those announcements can be, if you're looking for any NetSuite related position, if you're looking to hire somebody, or if you're looking for a NetSuite related job, we can post that information there or talk about that information then. After that, we're going to hear from our meeting sponsor today, Message Media. And then our main presentation is from 9 to 11. That'll be on supply chain process and inventory management in NetSuite. That'll be presented by Sarah Muha of RSMUS. After that, we'll have a Suite World 2022 update, and then we'll have a tip and trick from our Suite World as long as Margie's internet holds out. And then from 11:30 to 12, we'll have our open forum. Our open forum is an opportunity for you to ask questions to the group, and maybe as a group we can help either solve your problem or at least point you in the right direction of how to solve your problem. Membership to our user group is free. You register at rmnsug.org. When you register, that ensures that you get notification of upcoming meetings and events that we do. You also get LinkedIn forum access. If you have requested LinkedIn forum access and you have not signed up to be a member, we won't let you into the LinkedIn user group. But again, membership is free. All you have to do is sign up, and then you can access the LinkedIn user group. Also, CPE credits are available for our meetings. We'll have 2 CPE credits today. So if you're not a member, please make sure you sign up. On our LinkedIn user group forum, the purpose of this forum is to support fellow members with questions and answers. We can have follow-up questions and answers from our meetings. We post our announcements there. So when our presentations are available, any notes, discounts to Suite World, if there are any. And then you can also post job openings, or if you're looking for a job, on that LinkedIn user group forum. And again, it's a private group. We don't allow just anybody to join the group because we don't want it to be spammy. And so we do limit anybody advertising services on there as well, because the user group forum is for the members of the group and not to be advertised too overtly. Where to find us? We have a website. It is rmnsug.org. We're also on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and search RMNSUG. And then we have our LinkedIn user group. If you go to LinkedIn and you search for RMNSUG, you can find us there. You don't have to type in that group number, but there's the URL in case you want to go directly to it. Our previous meeting recordings, we have them on our website. Every meeting that we've done for the past, I don't know, 7 or 8 years, we have recorded, and those videos are on YouTube, but then the post is on our website, and you can download the meeting slides and then also watch the video. So if you have a colleague or somebody you know that couldn't make today's meeting or any of our past meetings, everything is available there. It's free. All you have to do is go to the site and find it. And that's at rmnsug.org/posts. And if you just go to the website, there's a link right there to go to our post page. Happy hour. So we had our very first live in-person happy hour. Gosh, it's been, I don't remember the date, but it was several weeks ago. It was really, really great to see some old faces and meet some new people. We had a pretty good turnout. We're hoping for a better turnout in the future, but it did snow on the day of our happy hour, and so that probably kept some people from coming down. But it was really great to see everybody. We're planning on doing this again, hopefully early next year. We're gonna try and do this a few times a year, and we are looking for different meeting spaces. So thanks for everybody that came out. It was really great to see everybody. We will be looking for good meeting spaces. We'd like to be able to do this in different parts of town so that it's easier for people to get to a meeting instead of maybe driving all the way across town or get to a happy hour. I mean, so this time it was in the South Denver area near DTC. We'd like to do one in the northern part, maybe western towards the foothills. So if you have any meeting spaces, any ideas of a place, please let us know, and so we can look into getting some more happy hours in the future. Okay, so we'll take a minute here, let anybody make a member announcement. You can unmute yourself, or if you want to post your announcement in the chat window, I will announce it here for you, but I'll just take a moment and let anybody unmute themselves and make an announcement. We know we have Muniza looking for a NetSuite administrator job. Make sure you post that in our LinkedIn user group forum as well. Anybody else, any job postings or looking for NetSuite related work? Okay, well, going once, going twice.
I'll go and speak up. Hopefully, you guys or somebody will know somebody in the Dallas area. My company is located 30 minutes east of Dallas, and we're going through a NetSuite implementation right now from Sage. And we're really hoping we can get somebody local to come in a couple days here and there while we finish up this implementation to maybe, that's kind of a pro at these implementations that can help us out where our implementers aren't exactly taking us through all the way. So
that sounds good. If you would post your contact information, if you want to, or at least your name, and somebody could find you on LinkedIn, that would be a good way to follow up on that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, anybody else? Last chance. Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on.
Oh,
so I'd like to just
post.
Oh, sorry. Based in Chile. Okay. In charge of supply chain activities. All right. Okay, anyway, so let's I'll just introduce the board. So the user group it's a nonprofit group. We are all volunteers, and we meet bi-monthly when we're not having the user group meetings to help plan out the content and manage the user group. So real quick, that's me in the upper left-hand corner. I'm Corey Anderson of Corey Anderson Consulting. I'm an independent NetSuite and Sligo consultant. Then we have our sponsorship and member chair, Margie Cominos of PlantScan Corp, also does NetSuite consulting. We have Mike Kackline of Vertifor, our communications chair. Then we have our speaker chair, Peggy Eveleth of RSMUS. And then Dana Larson of Dana Larson Consulting is our treasurer. So thank you again to all the board members for everything you do for this user group and helping to make sure that it stays successful year after year. Just a quick reminder, we do send out evaluations. They'll be sent out today. So please take a few minutes to let us know how we're doing. We do read and act on the feedback from those evaluations. If there's anything that we can do better for these meetings, we're also always interested in hearing what type of content that you would like. We do have a pretty good idea of the content, and we have a little bit of a rotating schedule where we do similar content every other year. Sometimes we do the same thing each year, like reports and safe searches. We always do that in January. But if there's any specific topics that you'd like to hear from us on, then please let us know in those evaluations. And then as a reminder, please use the same email address to RSVP as the email that you received the meeting invite. We try to maintain individual member records. We use a production NetSuite account to manage the user group. And so deduplication of multiple member records is challenging for us. There is no CPE credit information out yet. So I'll talk about that here in just a minute if anybody's curious. If you received an invite to the meeting with a different email addresses, please send an email to rsvp@rmnsug.org. And we'll have that extra email address inactivated so that you just have one record. Meeting sponsorship. So membership to our user group is free, as I've mentioned. The cost of running our meetings is supported by 2 levels of sponsorship. We have SuiteApp and consulting sponsors. SuiteApp sponsors must be available through suiteapp.com, and consulting sponsors must offer NetSuite consulting services and have certified NetSuite consultants on staff. So you can sign up for either sponsorship type at rmnsug.org/sponsorship. And all of the details are on that webpage. So our upcoming meetings in January, we have safe searches. And we've actually, for this meeting is very exciting. We've secured a presenter who is forget his title, but he is one of the chief education people at NetSuite. So we're going to have a NetSuite expert speaking on safe searches in January. So very excited for that. In March next year, we're going to have a procure to pay meeting. We haven't really done this topic before, so we're going to kind of dive into that, and that should be a good one. Then in May 2023, we're going to do advanced revenue management, otherwise known as ARM. We did that one almost about a year and a half ago, and so we're going to bring that one back, and that's usually a pretty interesting topic, and especially for companies that are using ARM. And then in July next year, we're going to have our accounting spotlight again. So that's on our 2-year cycle as well. CPE credits. So CPE credits for today's meeting. Certificates will be issued within 15 days after training. For problems with the CPE, you can email info@rmnsug.org. And the CPE credits are sponsored by iBailey. So to receive CPE credit for attending today's session, you must sign in and out of the session using code words. The facilitator will provide the first code word at the start of the session and then provide a checkout code word once the session is complete. You'll log in with your computer. You should have received an email with the URL to log in. I will post that in the chat window again here for everybody. I have not announced the first check-in word yet. We will do that at the beginning of our main presentation and then at the end of our main presentation. So please pay attention if you're interested in the CPE. It will be announced at approximately 9 o'clock. And let's go on. So at this point, I'd like to say thank you to our SuiteApp sponsor today, Message Media. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Longnecker, and we're going to hear from him and how cool Message Media is.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. Can everybody hear me? And I'm going to share my screen here as well.
We can hear you, yes.
Awesome. And can everybody see my screen?
Yep, looks good.
All right, cool. Awesome. Thank you guys for having us today. I'm Ryan Longnecker from Message Media. We have a Suite app in the App Store for text messaging inside of NetSuite. So just a quick overview. I'm going to talk about Message Media, a little bit about our Suite app, do a really quick demo, and just have Q&A at the end if anybody has any questions. But the first most important thing is we're giving away 2 Visa gift cards. One of them is going to be given away in about 9 minutes. If everyone can pull out your phone, pull out the camera on the phone. I think everyone's a little bit used to this now, scanning a QR code on the right-hand side of my screen. So all you have to do is scan the code with your phone real quick, tap send, which is going to text Rocky to 31853. And we're going to announce the first winner for the Visa gift card in about 9 minutes. If you have any questions about that, we will have a second gift card giveaway after the presentation. So make sure to scan it and text in that code as well. All right. So Message Media, we're the only native SMS integration for NetSuite. We've been around 12 years on the Suite App Store. We have 24/7, 365 follow the sun support. And we have about 70,000 worldwide customers with over 200 NetSuite customers. A couple examples of what our customers are using text messages inside of NetSuite for. We have billing and appointment reminders, which are huge. Order and delivery confirmations. So think item fulfillment, sales order, invoice. You can get a text message that actually gets opened instead of an email. We have field service notifications. So one of our partners is Next Technique with their field service management. We have efficient customer support communication. So no one's picking up their phone. No one's really opening up their emails. So people are actually going to open up their text messages. Back-end stock alerts. So speaking of supply chain management and inventory management, you can set up text message alerts for that as well. And then finally, abandoned cart notifications. There's just a few examples that our customers are currently using and you guys can use as well. Here's a few quotes from some of our customers here. Roth Living, who's also in Denver, said our solution is a no-brainer. We have a Suite app that provides custom options for customization and support. We've helped customers reduce phone calls, both inbound and outbound, with order inquiries as well. So just a few quotes that you can also find on the Suite App Store. Awesome. How can you guys use it? So I'm going to quickly share inside of my NetSuite here some of our top features, and we can do a more in-depth demo at another time if anyone's interested. So here's my NetSuite. I have custom dashboards that can be set up with our Suite app. So on the right-hand side, we have an inbox, so you never miss a text message that comes into your NetSuite. On the left-hand side, we have a few trend graphs here as well, so you can kind of monitor the inbound and outbound numbers of text that you're sending and receiving inside a NetSuite. If I pull up my customer and I have our Suite app installed, we add this conversations button to all relationship records inside of NetSuite. So contacts, customers, you can text your employees, your vendors, your partners, as long as they have a valid phone number in there. So I can pull up and type in a message here at the bottom. It'll send to my phone here on the right-hand side. Or if I want to, we have templates as well. So you can pre-save templates and you can pull in merge fields such as first name, last name, email, any type of field that's on the relationship record. You can merge that into your template as well. I can preview it up here in the top right. And I can send out that text just to make sure it goes out there. Perfect. So it pulls up on my phone. Thanks. I'm going to text back. You can also send and receive MMS. So maybe you have a logo, maybe you have a PDF, maybe you have an image that you want to send out to your customers, or you have images that your customers that want to send in to you so they can text in an image as well. I can also schedule messages to go out at a later date and time. So maybe I have a template here that I want to pull in, and I can pick the date and time as well. So that's our conversations feature. And we also have batch sending. So you can use saved searches, pull in 100 or 1,000 or 5,000 records inside of a saved search, pull that into our batch feature here. And then everything else is very similar. So we have our templates with merge fields. We can schedule the message to go out at a later date and time, or you can set it to be recurring. So maybe you have invoices that are due every Friday. You can set up a saved search for those, and you can schedule it to go out at a recurring basis. So it'll rerun the search every single week, pull in the new results, and it'll create a basic, easy automation for you so you can send out those text messages and people, again, will actually open them up. The last feature I want to share is how easy it is to implement inside of a workflow. So all you have to do is open a brand new workflow or a current workflow, and all you have to do to add in text messaging is to put in one single create record action. So if you already have approval workflows, if you already have email workflows set up, you can add in a text message with one single action, and it'll automate texting out to your customers, contacts, employees, leads, or even transactions as well. Any record inside of NetSuite, as long as there's a phone number, we can send the text to it. Awesome. I just have a few more minutes. That's the end of my demo here. Just quickly touching on the implementation steps. We have an 8-step quick start guide. We do a 1-hour kickoff call. We have a technical check-in call to make sure you're all set up and running, and then you go live. All of this can be done in as little as 7 days. I know that's pretty rare for most things in NetSuite, but it definitely can happen in less than 7 days. And my last slide here, again, make sure you scan this code. We're giving away the first gift card right now. And that gift card, once I pull up the chat here, hold on one second. We have not gotten a name yet for the winner, so we'll give that another minute for someone to text back their first and last name. But this screen, if you scan the code, put in that text, and we'll pick the winner here in about 60 seconds. We will also be doing a second drawing. So if you haven't entered yet, scan the code or text in Rocky to 31853. We're going to give another gift card away as well. If you want to connect with me, you can text me on the left-hand side. My LinkedIn's on the left-hand side. And if anybody has any questions, I'm going to pull up the chat here as well, and we can go through any of those if you'd like.
There is a question, Ryan.
Awesome. Perfect. Is there a special field for the text number and different fields for different topics? The first thing about the text number is it uses the built-in phone number fields inside of the relationship records. So it uses home phone, alt phone, mobile phone, and I think there was one more, office phone as well. So we use those 4 phone number fields. Is there different fields for different topics? Is someone able to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so what my question was is if you had a special field, because if you have an office phone, that's not one that you can text to. So if you'd had a phone number for the SMS message, I was wondering if you had one for, okay, this is AP messages, this is marketing messages. If you're doing a shipping, you don't necessarily want to send it to your, to one person versus another. So I was wondering if you had different fields for different topics.
No, that definitely makes sense. With the conversations button that I showed on the customer field, it's set to those 4 basic built-in phone number fields. But if you use a workflow, you can use any phone field that you want. So you can create 10 custom fields and send those texts to those 10 different kind of topic phone numbers as well.
That was going to be my next question. Thank you.
Awesome. Before I get to this last question, the winner of the first gift card is Douglas Hunter. So congratulations to Douglas. And we'll make sure to communicate with you via text on how to get you that gift card. And then who is the SMS carrier? Do we get to choose? So the messaging all comes through our platform. So we communicate with every single carrier in the world. So we can text anywhere. The phone number that you're texting from is totally up to you. We can connect with the phone number you already have. You can get a short code like we have, the 31853, or you can get a 1-800 number as well. I hope that answered your question, Roy. Awesome. And I believe I'm right up on time there. So thank you guys so much for having Message Media today. And if you have any other questions, just let us know.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. And thank you, Message Media, for sponsoring the user group today. We really appreciate it. Okay, before we get into our main presentation this morning, I'm going to post our CPE check-in keyword, check-in code. So hang on just a moment. I'm going to leave this up for 1 minute and give everybody a chance to go and do the check-in. I'm also going to post in the chat window the URL to check in. Let me see, I think, yep, that's it right there. So the link to check in for your CPE, our check-in code word is holiday. So I'll let this go, hang out here for a minute. And again, thank you to Eid Bailey for sponsoring our CPE, continuing to sponsor CPE for our meetings. Okay, CPE check-in code word going once, going twice. It is holiday. All right, so I'm going to, at this point, turn it over to Sarah Muha, our main presenter today. And Sarah, you can go ahead and take over from here.
All righty, everybody. Good morning to you all. Thank you, Corey, for having me here today, and everyone else on the RMNSUG board. Just to quickly introduce myself before we start today's presentation. As mentioned, I am an employee at RSM US LLP. I am what's called a pre-sales engineer or solution consultant, if you will. So I work on the pre-sales side, doing a lot of product demonstrations. And before that, I came directly from NetSuite. I spent years at NetSuite as an implementation consultant and then a new hire trainer and curriculum developer. So very nice to be here with you all today. I've got about 2 hours with you. We're going to be going over inventory management and supply chain. Now, just to give a brief overview of what I'm intending to cover today, we're going to start things off pretty basic and just go over a review of records. So we're going to really set the groundwork, understand inventory in NetSuite, taking our particular focus on inventory items and assembly items. And then after setting the groundwork, we're going to just go into some transactions that are relevant to inventory management and supply chain. So we'll go through work orders, ordering items, WIP and routing, outsourced manufacturing, receiving orders, transferring inventory, adjusting inventory, and then we'll wrap things up with some reports and dashboards as well, just to showcase some of those features that are really useful specifically for an end user.
Sarah,
all right, so that's my intention for,
we're not seeing your screen. If you are intending to share, just wanted to point that out.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I have not started sharing just yet.
Just making sure.
Thank you. Yep. All right, so I will take us into NetSuite, and now I will begin sharing my screen. I'm going to be mostly staying in just the administrator role for my own ease, but we will dive into dashboards and other roles later on as promised. All right, so you all should be able to see my screen now. We're going to start things off by just talking about item types in NetSuite. When you go to create an item, you're going to be brought to this page, and you'll see the full list of options that you have for the item types. You have options for physical inventory types like inventory, non-inventory items. You have non-physical item types, for instance, like service items. You have clustered items like item groups, assemblies, kits and packages. And then you have ones that are useful for transaction management, like discount items, subtotal, markup, or payment items. When you're selecting some of the physical inventory options, you can see here for the assembly and inventory items, you have the option for both lot numbered and serialized. A serialized item will require a serial number when fulfilling or receiving that item. It's really useful for then being able to see the history of that serial number. So if a customer comes to you with an issue about a particular product, you can pin down exactly what product they received. And maybe there's a batch of serial numbers that are having this issue, for instance. And you can find those serial numbers that have been sold to a customer on the customer record. Now, lot numbered, the other option, is often used for perishable items. It's really great for maintaining expiration dates, and it lets you track the quantity of items and the specific cost for each lot. So it kind of aggregates those items. Your costing will be done at the lot level. And then again, you have that tracking ability. Again, thinking of food or perishable items, you know, if you have an issue with a batch of lettuce, for instance, then you can track it back to that lot and be able to see where that lot went out and track that down for recalls, for instance. Now, going back to the clustered items, you have item groups, kits and packages, and assemblies. Item groups are based on component prices. So you'll create the group of the items that you would like, and the price of the group is based on those components. It can contain both taxable and non-taxable items, and the tax will only be calculated on taxable. Kits and packages are very similar to item groups, but the price is not dependent on the components prices. So you can set your own price for kits and packages, which allows you to use the capability of having different price levels, and your inventory levels are tracked by components. So when you're checking your inventory levels, you would never see how many kits you have available. You would just see how many components of that kit you have available. And then the last one, which we are going to spend a lot more time on throughout this presentation, is assembly items, which assembly items is similar in that, yes, it's a group of items, it's a clustered item, but NetSuite tracks the stock separately for the assembly and for the member components. So you would be able to see your inventory levels of the components, and then you're able to see also the inventory levels of that assembly. So you would see, hey, I have 5 of this assembly available, and that does not include the amount of the components as well. That would remove the components from component inventory. All right, so that sets the stage for the item types in NetSuite. Let's actually go and visit a item record in NetSuite. I've got one that's quite a mouthful here that we're just going to visit here. And we'll go to this inventory item to talk through some of the things that are relevant to the inventory items themselves. So this is just a MacBook Pro item, came with my demo account. You have your standard ability to apply segmentation to the inventory item that, of course, will then default that segmentation to the transactions associated with this item. NetSuite can also leverage units of measure. I won't be displaying that today, but that's a great use if you were selling in a different unit than you stock or that you purchase in. For instance, if you purchase in yards and sell in inches, for instance, or in feet. On a item record, you're going to have plenty of tabs here. We'll go through some of them. Your purchasing and inventory tab is, as the name entails, where everything purchasing related is going to live on this item record, like assigning your costing method. NetSuite can accommodate for quite a few different costing methods. This item is utilizing average costing, which is just a moving average method. So NetSuite will then calculate your cost based on the total units available during a specific date range and divide that by the beginning inventory cost plus the cost additions of inventory. Other options you have for costing methods, you have FIFO and LIFO. FIFO being first in, first out, first goods purchased are the first goods sold. Of course, great for, let's say, like food items. If they're expiring, you want to get the first ones out. For LIFO, the last goods purchased are the first goods sold. So I thought of an example, maybe like car parts, right? You can get a car part a year prior, and it's going to be the same car part that you're getting today. It's not going to expire or anything. So you can utilize LIFO in that scenario. You can also utilize standard costing to track standard costs for items and then be able to track variances between those expected costs and the actual costs. You have the option for group average, serialized, and lot numbered. And if it's a serialized item, then the costing method has to be serialized, and for lot number, it has to be lot number costing method. After you save the costing method, it cannot be changed. So just kind of keep that in mind when setting up your inventory. Be mindful of this on the purchasing tab for setting that up correctly the first time. And the costs are calculated when the item is brought into inventory. So in a standard transaction flow, you have a purchase order, item receipt, and then vendor bill that item is hitting your inventory at the time of item receipt, and that's when your costing would be then calculated. Let's go to the locations tab here on this item record. This, as you can see, has just tons of fields here on the location sub-tab. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but ultimately, this tab lets you track your inventory across all of your locations. So that includes your physical locations, like your warehouses, but it can also include locations, for instance, like I have an outsourced manufacturer here, this CMO Thailand, or it could also house inventory levels for your 3PLs as well. NetSuite is incredibly strong in just full transparency of your inventory levels, and utilizing the location feature, multi-location inventory allows you to have this insight. So we can see by location, we can see the quantity that I have on hand, the value of that, what that average cost is, what I've purchased recently. I want to point out also the ability to input a safety stock level and or a preferred stock level. I'm going to go into edit mode to depict this. You do have some dependencies above here on the item. Your replenishment method that you select is going to determine whether you have the ability to put in a preferred stock level or a safety stock level and some other fields here. So just kind of keep that in mind. For instance, if I change it to MRP, I no longer have preferred stock level available. It wasn't available before either, but still it's going to update some other fields through here based on the replenishment method that you use. Reorder point is the default method. So when you're setting up an item, that's going to be the default method assigned to it. And that means that orders are then created based on replenishment reminders that are generated from the order items page, replenish items page, or mass create work orders, which we will be going through later on. It also affects some other fields here too. For instance, I think if you switch to time phase, then seasonal demand here is no longer available. Reorder multiple is no longer available. So just kind of keep that in mind. So oftentimes, as a consultant, I oftentimes got questions, why is this field grayed out? And a lot of times it's dependent based on what replenishment method you have selected on the item. Other things at this location level, you can also see quantity that's been committed by location, the quantity on order by location, and you can also manage your cycle counts here as well. So you can schedule cycle counts to occur, add classifications to a cycle count as well.
Sarah,
all right.
Sarah, we have a couple questions, and I don't know how you want to handle the questions. Someone asked, can a discount be applied to items in an item group automatically? And then someone else asked, is FEFO supported, FEFO?
Okay, I appreciate that. No, this is a great time for questions. I actually don't know offhand if discounts can be applied to item groups. I think though we can probably just take a quick field trip ourselves and just kind of look at the setup of an item group to see if you can. Does not look like it. There's no pricing tab for that because it is dependent upon the components. So I would assume so not. You can apply it to the transaction, but not to the group itself as far as I can tell. And then for the second question, FEFO, I have never seen that in NetSuite, so I don't think that is supported. And I also invite, if anybody else on the phone call knows these answers to these questions or has a differing view, you're welcome to also point out. I wouldn't be offended. But as far as I know, yes. I've never seen that costing method.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Gary DeWill.
Yes.
Yes, I'm with NetSuite. We do have a FIFO solution, so first expiry, first out. It's a suite app that runs on top of supply allocations. So in terms of inventory commitments, the first requirement would be to use supply allocations, and then you can have a suite app that sits on top of that to deal with lot expiration numbers.
That is awesome. Thank you. Now I got to learn something as well. I did not know that, so I appreciate it.
We also have another question. What is the difference between reorder point with seasonal demand checked versus time phased? And I think you were saying they were kind of mutually exclusive, but why don't you talk about that? I mean, can you address that?
I think the main difference here is that reorder point does not use demand planning. So that's why, actually, I don't know. I know it doesn't use demand planning. I'm having a hard time kind of on the spot thinking of the answer to that question. I apologize. I don't think I know how to answer that.
Yeah, that's no problem. We can follow up in our LinkedIn forum with those types of questions. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Shoving right along when it comes to the inventory items. And also, as questions come up, I would say I don't notice the chat coming up, so anyone can point them out. I'll also try to take some logical breaks too when there's a good time for questions as well. Going on here, after the purchasing tab, you have your sales and pricing tab. That's where you can set your item pricing, utilize quantity-based pricing, as we can see here. We also then on the accounting tab, where you set the account information on the item, the tax schedule. Related records tab is going to show you the history of the transactions that this item is present on. When I give demonstrations, I always like to call the information that you can receive on entity records like mini reports, because you can customize this view, determine the information you want to see. You can sort it by date, as you can see here, or I can sort it by type or by document number just by clicking on the name here at the top. And then you can see I can sort it by type of transaction. It just kind of gives me like a report view of this item's history. Similar to that, we have the item 360 here. The item 360 is another thing that I would call a mini report in my demonstrations. It's going to give you information specific to this item. So for instance, your sales and margin information. You can see also currently, what's your on-hand quantity, what's currently on sales orders and purchase orders. And then you can see some comparative data here too. And again, that's average cost and margin. You have your historical item sales as well, just to give you some insights on when you're selling these items. So if you're trying to track, how often an item is being sold, NetSuite's capturing this information for you to kind of gather seasonal demand. You can see any open sales orders, purchase orders that this item is also currently on and the status of those. The communication tab, I just point this out because a lot of times people ask me if they can add files to inventory records, and this is where you would do so on the communication tab here. On the inventory detail tab, that's where you're going to be able to see things like inventory statuses or any of the bins, for instance. You would be able to see that here, so we can see some inventory statuses associated with this item. We have all goods here, fortunately, and the amount of on hand. If you had some in bad status, let's say at the California location, you would be able to see, let's say I have 29 in good status in California and then 20 in bad status in California. You would have two lines here so you can see that. We'll talk about inventory statuses a bit more later on. And I think for the most part, that's what I intended to, oh, no, I do want to show the system information tab on the record as well. The system information, of course, is where your audit trail is going to live here under system notes. I always point out during my demonstrations that most NetSuite records are always going to have that communication tab and that system information tab. So that's where you can house your files. Also send communication, for a customer record, you can see the emails that have gone out, for instance. And then system information, again, is where you can find your audit trail information as well. Next up, I want to take us to a assembly item. So I kept things very simple here. We're just going to follow a lamp. And as we go later on throughout the process, create a work order, we're going to use this lamp assembly. An assembly item is going to have very similar options that we saw on the inventory item. You have your segmentation offerings. You have the ability for units of measure here if necessary, your purchasing and sales and pricing tab. Item 360, again, you're going to have a lot of the same information on the assembly item that you do on the standard inventory item. So you have your information on the location values for each item that you can see here. You have your item 360 again, but what I really want to point out here now is the addition of the manufacturing tab. The manufacturing tab is where you will then see your bill of materials as well as manufacturing routing. Now, a blanket statement I want to put forth is that this account is running advanced bill of materials. So what I will be showing you is utilizing that feature in NetSuite. It is a feature that you turn on in your enable features. And what advanced bill of materials, well, actually, I'll take a step back first, just in case to make sure we're all on the same page. A bill of materials to start is the list of the quantities of raw materials, assemblies, subcomponents, and or parts that you need to manufacture a product. And I'll showcase one of these in a moment. So going back to advanced bill of materials, what that feature does is it allows you to create a bill of materials as a standalone entity or item or record, basically. So in an account in which you're not using advanced bill of materials, you would input the components of the assembly item here on the record, and then it would just be that assembly item as that bill of materials all the time. Now, using advanced bill of materials, though, you can have multiple bill of materials, or you can have one bill of materials with multiple revisions, for instance. Also allows you to copy existing BOMs to create new ones, as opposed to, without advanced BOM, you would have to copy the item, which is a little bit different. You can also use a single BOM across multiple assemblies. So I can use the same bill of materials across multiple assemblies. You may be thinking, why would you do that? The situation, for instance, is, let's say, when assembling a bicycle, and there are, the components for assembling a wheel are the same no matter what type of bicycle, for instance. Even though you can have different bicycle SKUs, let's say that wheel remains consistent, so you can have that bill of materials associated with the assembly for that and use it for multiple items. You can also assign multiple BOMs to a single assembly, as I mentioned, and this also allows you to have unique BOMs for stages of that product life cycle. So for instance, you can have a BOM for the engineering portion of the assembly, one for the production of the assembly, one for a contractor, for instance, if necessary. All right, so let's dive a little bit deeper into that now. Just to reiterate, I'm on the manufacturing tab here on the record. And this is where we'll find the bill of materials and the revisions. I guess before I jump into these records here, I can stop to see if there's any questions that I can answer in the meantime. I could open the chat.
Hi, I have a quick question. We do assembly builds for our finished product. And sometimes if I have to go back in and edit an item, and then I go to save it again, it'll give me an error message saying there's not enough components to build this. Are you sure you want to continue? And I do, and it seems fine, but it just seems like a weird message to get.
So what that sounds like to me is that you're possibly editing the assembly with another item. You're adding an additional item to that assembly, and you don't have that component available in your inventory. to build an assembly, you need to have the component inventory available at the location in which you're building. So the finished lamp, for instance, has 3. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry. I'm not adding any additional items. It's just maybe I need to, you know, it's let's say our thing has like 5 or 6 components. And if I have to change the lot number on one of the subcomponents, or, you know, and then I'm like resaving it, it seems to give me this message. I mean, I think things have been fine. I haven't noticed anything off in my inventory. I just was curious as to why that would be happening.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I can't say I've come across that. That kind of sounds like something that, someone brought something up. If components are committed to other work orders, it could display that message. Okay, so if that lot is committed elsewhere, that would make sense.
Well, also there's the situation where you actually do have the inventory, but your inventory is off. And in that case, there is actually a global setting. If you know you have inventory and that's not a problem, there is a global setting you can set, and I don't know what it is offhand. I've set it from, you know, our own company and other clients, where it'll still let you go ahead and build.
Yeah,
even if that message comes up.
Yeah, it lets me do the build. It just sort of gives this warning that, yeah, I wasn't sure why it was popping up, but the inventory seems to be fine though, so.
Okay,
thanks.
All right. I see some discussion around the item 360 and the Suite app, the supply chain bundle. Let's see. As part of the item master, does NetSuite have fields to enter the physical characteristics? No, but you can add those as custom fields. Let's see. I'm just trying to gloss over. Okay, I think we're okay on questions. Is there anything someone asked that hasn't been answered, whether through the chat or through discussion? Okay, all right. So let's quickly go then visit the BOM. Just to showcase this, the BOM record is where you'll then be able to see the respective revisions and assemblies that are associated with this bill of materials. You can restrict it to locations or make it available to all locations, and then restrict it to subsidiaries as well. Then you can see any of those revisions available here, as well as then the assemblies that this BOM is allocated to. Again, as I mentioned, a BOM can be assigned to multiple assembly items. Let's go into this revision then here directly from this page. So this is the revision that's currently being used for the finished lamp. What I want to point out that I think a lot of people appreciate about utilizing the advanced bill of materials is that you can have an effective start and end date to your revisions. So you can have multiple iterations. That way you can see kind of the backlog of how the items used to be produced, for instance, using a different revision. Or if you know, let's say you're going to run out of a certain component and switching the component up slightly, then you can have a revision change to represent that and determine the effective date that that revision should then be used moving forward. The bill of materials revision then contains the components of the assembly item. So I have 3 components here. I kept things very simple here for our lamp. There's probably more to it. We have a light bulb, a lamp base, and lamp shade. Some things that you can set here is your component yield. So what this is saying right now to NetSuite is that these items are operating at 100% component yield. So that's saying that whatever is brought into the manufacturing process is ending up in the finished product. Now, this can make my head hurt a little bit sometimes. So how I like to think of it, an example is, for instance, Coca-Cola requires about 2 liters of water to create 1 liter of Coca-Cola. So that component yield would be about 50%, because even though 2 liters are being utilized, only 1 is actually going into the final product. In a way, it's not an exact example, but it's how I kind of thought about it and made more sense to me. So you can think about that as component yields. And then in the case of NetSuite, then, for instance, in taking that Coca-Cola example, for instance, where you need then 2 liters of water, if you have a component yield of 1 or of 0.5, and you need 1 liter, NetSuite would then determine, oh, actually we need 2 liters in this scenario because the yield is 50%. So hopefully that example made some sense, hopefully gave you a vision in your mind there. You also can then determine the quantities, of course, of these items, as you can see here, and then where that item is being sourced from. So all of these are being sourced from stock. So then when NetSuite is looking to build this assembly in a work order, it's going to be looking to pull that inventory from stock. So you need to have that inventory available. And then you have an option, for instance, to also have it come from a purchase transaction. And then if you do have, let's say we had the light bulb that the item source was purchase order, then upon creation of the transaction requesting this assembly, that would also then create a purchase order to procure that item, because that's where NetSuite is told that that item needs to come from. It needs to come from a purchase order. Okay, so that's our revisions, our bill of materials. The last 2 things that I want to talk through in regards to just setting the stage here before we get into transactions and just going over records. We have the location record. This one's very simple, but it's relevant to, oh, I clicked on classes. It's relevant to what we're going to be seeing today. I showed you the location tab on the item record. And again, these locations can represent more than just your own physical warehouse location. Again, I have an outsourced manufacturer location that we'll go through a bit more later on. You can also use locations, for instance, for like quarantine locations. When you're setting up a new location, you have the option to make inventory available or not, or also control if it's included in supply planning or the supply chain control tower. And let's say you wanted to make a quarantine location to house inventory that's damaged. You can create a quarantine location and make that inventory not available. That way it's not going to be used on sales transactions then. So that's location record. And then the last thing I want to talk about a little bit more in depth, we already kind of glossed over it briefly, was the statuses and bins. So I'm going to go visit a record in NetSuite that has both being utilized. Very original name here, finished product. But going to the inventory detail tab here, you can see the bin number and status associated with each location. So I can see in this bin number, this inventory number, as well as then the status associated with it. Again, they're all good, but I would be able to see, you know, line by line, the different statuses. Where I see statuses used for, again, similar to kind of what I talked about in regards to quarantine location. If you have inventory that you're receiving that's damaged, whether it's from a vendor or from customer returns, you can utilize status to remove that inventory from sellable inventory. Or, you know, you can have, I usually just see good and bad actually, for the most part. And then bins also, again, just showing you your on hand for these bins, but that inventory detail gives you a little bit deeper information on the status of those as well. Okay. Any questions right now? Is the status linked to the quarantine location? In this scenario, no, but you could do that. So you could say, you know, you could use a bad status and then also add it to the quarantine location. But how I have this set up and kind of how natively NetSuite would think about that is they're not connected unless you kind of go through that process of connecting them to say, hey, this is a bad status and I've put it in the quarantine location. How is status set up? So you can set up your statuses, let's see if I remember, under the supply chain tab. You would just go to create the statuses. Ultimately, it's pretty simple setup at this fundamental area. You just name the status, and then this is where you determine, is this inventory available or not? So there's no place here, as you can see, to tag it to a location. So you would need to kind of do that linkage to say, yes, this, when you're receiving that inventory, you would then say it's a bad status and receive it to the quarantine location in that scenario to kind of link the two. Does the status keep inventory from being visible for commitment or consumption? Exactly. Yes. So when you set up the status, which I only have a good status right now, the good status makes it available. Well, that's weird. Those aren't. Oh, it's just because it's default. But when you create a new status, yes, you have the option to determine if it's available for commitment or consumption. And if you uncheck this and use that status, apply it to an item, then it would not be available. Can statuses be changed on transactions other than inventory status change? So is that like you've already received the item and then you assigned a status to it and then you want to change that status down the line? Is that the question, David? Okay. We can come back to that. I think I understand the question. And to go back on a transaction and change, again, if I'm understanding correctly, to go back on a transaction and change it after the fact, I'm not sure if you can do that. Can you assign a service level to an item? For example, your high velocity items, you may want to have 100% service level, so purchasing uses this information for procurement. Some items based on velocity may carry a lower service level. I would say, I guess when it comes to like service level, what do you mean by service level? Like it requires assembly on your end, or what do you mean by that?
You can unmute yourself and just speak up without having to type something in too.
You can set for the auto calculation a change in the service days by item, but you can't set a service level.
Okay, that sounds like someone gave the answer then. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, moving right along, now that we've set the groundwork on our inventory, it's time to actually go into transactions that are relevant here. So we're going to start things off by creating a sales order. Now, and we're going to create a sales order for the assembly item lamp that we went through looking at the BOM and revision for. So let's create a sales order. I guess a couple of things I'll mention here is that in regards to generating a work order, there are a couple ways that that can occur. And I'm going to try to show most of or all of them. So let's go through first example here. Let's add Costco here as our customer. And we're going to procure one lamp from us. Now, we need to input the location because that will affect the inventory available. So let's put in our California location. So what that was telling me, sorry, I should have let it sit there for a second. But basically NetSuite gave me a warning. You've probably seen it before. NetSuite gave me a warning saying that you don't have this inventory available. It showed me how much I had. Actually, I can just switch to a different one. So it shows me how much I have available for commitment, how much are back ordered and on order. So in California, I have 3 back ordered. It's not popping up again, but I remember seeing that. So I input this item here. And now in regards to creating work orders, like I said, there's a couple ways to go about that. First way is that if the item is set as a special work order item, which is a setting that you can set on the item record. I don't remember offhand. I think it's under the manufacturing tab, actually, where you can mark the item as a special work order item. And if you do, then by default, when you add that item to a transaction, it will check create work order on this transaction. And then upon saving the sales order, it will then generate a work order that corresponds with this order. Now you also have the option to manually select create work order, which I can do here, and I will do to generate that work order for us. And that's the second way that you can generate the work order, is if it's not automatically pulling from a special work order item. And then the third way is that if NetSuite finds that you create a sales order for an assembly item and you have the components available, but you don't have any of that assembly available, then a work order will be queued for creation. So it won't automatically create that sales order. I'll show you the mass create work orders page where it will queue up work orders to then be created. So NetSuite's kind of doing a little thinking for you. It sees you have a need for that assembly item. It sees you have the components available to build the assembly item. So it queues up that work order for you so that you can then fulfill this order in the future. All right, so let's save this sales order here. And upon save, since I selected create work order, it will then generate a work order for us automatically that's linked to this sales order. All right, so we can see that we have the original sales order still created. I'll open that in a new tab, as well as now the work order. So the sales order is in the status of pending fulfillment, but I would not be able to fulfill it right now. If I were to go to fulfill it, I would not be able to because I don't have that inventory available. As we can see also reflected here, I have none on hand or available. And then this is also then the work order that was created. We'll go into this work order a bit more later on. We'll go through building this work order in the second part of our transaction section. This is a standard work order. I will also show you a work order later on with WIP and routings, which is different than this. So you'll see here at the top, you ultimately just have the option to close this or create the build for this work order. And if you're utilizing WIP and routings, then you'll have additional options here at the top, which we'll see in a bit. All right, so that's some of the ways to create a work order. As mentioned, you also have the option to mass create work orders to show you that. This mass create work orders page allows kind of NetSuite again to do some thinking for you and is going to recommend what should be assembled. So for instance, we can see for, well, and also this is sorted by the reorder point and time phase that we talked about earlier on the item record. So I don't have any time phased items that are due for replenishment, but I do have some reorder point items. And kind of trying to circle back into what we saw on the item record in regards to putting like a preferred stock level, for instance, you can see that's being sourced in here, as well as a build point for this item. NetSuite has found that the build point and preferred stock level for this item has been surpassed. So it queued that up for generation of at least 5 of these items. So we can see that in the location of Colorado, that it's suggesting a quantity of 5 because that's going to get us to our build point here, to our preferred stock level. But then the one above is requesting a quantity of 8 because we have some that are back ordered. I'm actually a little surprised it's only showcasing 8 instead of 9 since there's 4 back ordered, but I think it has something to do with the one on order. I might already have one committed. NetSuite can allow some kind of efficiency in that sense. And also you can see that there's an option for planned orders as well. And then from here, I can directly create work orders for these items. I'll create one for this Colorado location, and it will generate that for us. If that page was full of items that are due for work orders, then you can mass create them from there. So I only had the 2 that were queued up, but if you had, hundreds, then you can queue up lots of work orders quickly from that page as opposed to having to do it manually. And now we've created a work order that we can see here that was created directly from that page for 5 of the lamps and the components associated with that lamp. All right. Another way in which NetSuite, again, can kind of do some thinking for you in your inventory management is the order items page. So what this page will do is check to see items that NetSuite's going to suggest for you to order based on, again, those settings that you set at the inventory level. So if you're saying, hey, we like to have a minimum of 10 on hand and we're at 8, again, NetSuite's going to see that and it's going to try to initiate ways for you to replenish that inventory. So again, it's broken out by time phase items, reorder point items, planned orders. You also can have them pull from blanket POs. Where I have this is really on the reorder points because all of my items are running on reorder points. So this is showing us, we can see this first line perfectly. We can see we have 31 available, but our reorder point we set at 40. So we're below that reorder point and we want to have at least 40. So NetSuite is suggesting that we create a purchase order for 9 of these items to get us up to that amount. Also, you can see there at the second line, though, is that if you do have a preferred stock level, that supersedes the reorder point. So we have a preferred stock level of 100 here and a reorder point of 150. So the preferred stock level is being utilized for the recommendation of what to purchase from this vendor. So this page is really useful for then mass creating purchase orders for items that you can see that you are low on inventory for. And again, by location, you can see that as well. So you can send out all of your purchase orders for the California location through this page, for instance. You'll notice some of them are grayed out. That's because you do need to determine a vendor. If you have a preferred vendor for this item, for instance, then it will automatically pull in that vendor that we can see going on here to procure that item. But you can also change this here into a different vendor for the creation of that purchase order. So let's actually go and create a purchase order for this one here for that MacBook Pro that we saw earlier, that item record. And let's generate this purchase order here. So I submitted it. Again, you can submit multiple at a time. We'll let this refresh for a second. And then NetSuite will generate that purchase order for us. If you do have approvals associated with your purchase orders, that also would then come at play here. This does not supersede approvals if you do have approvals at play, but I have it just set to automatically approve. And we have this purchase order that has now been created. And later on, we'll go through the process of receiving this order. But we can see it pulled in that information for us and pre-populated that quantity based on the levels that we had set on the item record. All right, let me save this purchase order number so we can revisit it later. Does anybody, now's a great time for any additional questions? I can open the chat in a second. It pulls the preferred vendor from the record, but if you want to select someone else, why does it show all vendors versus just the others on that record? In that scenario, there was no other vendors associated with that item, and you need to have options to be able to input them. It's just kind of like, you can think of it like if you're creating a purchase order standalone. When you create a purchase order standalone, even if you have items associated with or vendors associated with a specific item, you're still choosing the vendor, right? So I still have my full list of vendors. Even after I select an item here, I'm still going to have my full list of vendors available. And that's because it's using that order items page is kind of like creating a purchase order on this page, just a more efficient way. So it's kind of like you have that same functionality as you do when you're creating a standalone purchase order. Let's see. Yes, you can order from all locations instead of just one location. Again, back at this page here, the order items page, I could have selected, you see, a lot of these are for different locations. I have 3 different locations here. I could have initiated multiple directly from here. I only just did it from one location. But you could do for any of the ones that are queued up here. Okay. Oh, I think maybe that wasn't the question, but it looks like Margie answered it. Okay. All right. To wrap up this section before we take a quick break, I want to take a bit to talk about WIP and routings as well as outsourced manufacturing. So some more complex components of inventory management. I mentioned earlier that the work order that we generated was a standard work order that does not utilize WIP and routings. But if I will create one for us here and we'll see those differences. And then we can go back and compare if necessary. Just to kind of give a blanket statement about WIP and routings. WIP and routings is, in my opinion, best when production takes more than a day. That's usually kind of the criteria for when I say that it's useful to use WIP and routings. Using WIP and routings allows you to have multiple work centers throughout the process. You can, and I'll showcase that actually, my manufacturing routing has 3 different work centers. So you can have different people assigned to those work centers. You can then track the resource costs associated with those work centers and process overhead costs. You can only use WIP and routings with items that are using standard or average costing. Just to let you know, point that out if you're ever trying to do it and you're not able to, it could just be the costing method that you're using on the item. All right, so what I'll do to showcase this is I'll create a work order for us that will utilize WIP and routing. So let's go and create a work order. Okay, actually, let me take a real quick step back. I want to visit the item record first, and I clicked on the wrong page anyway. I want to check on the item record just to show you. There is a place on the location tab on the record to signify that it utilizes WIP. And you can determine this by location. So again, if you're running into issues not having the ability to use WIP and routings, maybe it's based on the location not being selected for using WIP. So you can see this kind of hidden here back on this location tab, but you do have to have this selected for the location in which the work order is being generated for WIP and routings to be used. All right, so let's go back to a work order now that we kind of set that up. So this is the item we're going to use here. We'll put that assembly in. We got to choose a subsidiary for first, of course. I was not intentional in the name of this item here, but it's a little funny regardless. All right, so let's generate this item, this work order here, pulling in the item that Flex circuit board here. It pulls in, of course, that segmentation from the item. It also pulls in the bill of materials revision that it's utilizing at that time. So if I had multiple revisions, I can choose a different revision. And then the components of that assembly are pulled in here that we can see here. I do have one that's pulling from a purchase order. I showed you on the revision setup that you can determine the item source to be stock or purchase order. So I'll show you upon saving this, you'll be able to see how that purchase order is also created from here. I want to point out also that this production end date or start date. Oh, I need to determine a location. So once I choose a location, then that's when WIP and routing becomes available. Again, remember I showed you on the item record, you have to put that selection for WIP for that location. So if I would have saved, which I accidentally almost did, if I would have saved this work order without a location, it would have considered it a standard work order because there is no location to check to see if there is WIP and routing set up for that. So now that I've selected a location, now I want to bring our attention to the scheduling method. You have two options for your scheduling method. You have forward and backward. Basically what this is then doing is it's going to change what field you have available. As you can see here, this production start date becomes available when you select forward, and production end date becomes available when you select backward. Ultimately, the difference here is that you know when you are starting this work order, or instead, do you know when it needs to be completed by? If you know when it needs to be completed by, like let's say it needs to be completed by Friday so it can be shipped out, I can put backward and put the production end date that I ideally would like here as 11/18. And utilizing the manufacturing routings, which I will pull that up in another tab just to show that to you in a moment, you can input information into how long each step actually takes. And if it takes, days, then NetSuite will then do that calculation for you, right? So if NetSuite knows that the process for creating this build is going to take 4 days, and I tell NetSuite that the production end date is 11/18, actually that wouldn't work because we didn't give NetSuite 4 days, but NetSuite would then start that production for that item 4 days prior to this end date. And then if you switch to forward, then that's basically just saying to NetSuite, hey, I'm starting it on this date. It defaults to today's date. And then it's still going to utilize the information from the manufacturing routing to estimate when this is going to be completed. So again, if it's going to take 4 days, but then it's telling NetSuite it's starting on this day as opposed to when it needs to be completed by. So that's the difference between the two of them. And as you can see, it's a required field here. And then if you do select backward, you do have to manually input that date. Otherwise, if you use forward, that production start date is going to default to today's date, and you can still change it. Real quickly, before I save this, we can go and view the manufacturing routings that's being used here, just to showcase what that looks like. So this is a circuit assembly routing. At the routing setup, you can determine the locations that this is available for. So on top of having to set it at the item level to say that this location uses width, you also have to make sure that there is a routing that also belongs to that location. So on this routing, we can see we have some operations that are components of this assembly. So there's tasks that need to be completed. There's the circuit assembly setup, the insertion of the panel, as well as then testing. So this kind of takes it another level from having just a bill of materials that says what items need to be included in the assembly. This is also saying, you know, what actual tasks need to be included and what needs to occur with those products. So we can see here that we are utilizing different works. Well, they're actually all the same work center, but you can have different work centers just to showcase what that work center then looks like. This is where you can assign members to that work center. And this is, as I mentioned earlier, you can utilize WIP and routings and manufacturing work centers to be able to allocate and record resource costs and process overhead costs. And then this is where I was referencing as well that you can input the time that it takes for this task to be completed. So that's where my example of, let's say, 4 days occurs, and it's going to take 4 days to create the item. You can pinpoint, hey, this step takes 5 hours, this step takes 10 hours, and so on. And then that will be used for NetSuite kind of planning purposes, as we saw based on the scheduling method on the work order. All right, so this is our manufacturing routing. Coming back to this work order, that is the manufacturing that is going to be applied to this work order. So this work order is going to probably take a minute, honestly, to save because it's generating that work order based on the routings, but it's also generating that purchase order because this item here is being pulled from a purchase order as opposed from stock. Honestly, it was a bit faster than I expected. You can see that it generates a purchase order that from there you can then receive. Of course, it's just a standard purchase order at that point, but then we also have our work order that has been generated. Now, real quickly, I also want to pull up a different work order just so you can see the difference between the two of them. So this work order that is utilizing WIP and routings, we see that we have options to issue components, enter completion, and enter completion with backflush. On a standard work order, you only have the option to create build, as you can see here. So coming back to this work order now, what the difference is pretty much between them, and I can kind of show you. Enter completion and enter completion with backflush is going to take you to the same page. The only difference is that selecting enter completion with backflush is going to by default check backflush. And what backflush means in this scenario is that the component consumption is recorded at the same time as this completion. So upon submitting this and saying backflush has been checked here, which again, I selected work order completion with backflush, that's by default checked here. That's saying that these components are being consumed and these components should be pulled from inventory at this time. I can also then input my starting operation and ending operation. And this is referencing to those routings. So remember, my routing had 3 steps. So this is what's representative of those steps here. So if I wanted to capture a completion of the first step, for instance, then I would just say starting operation is 1 and ending operation is 1. And you'll actually notice that as I did that, these other 2 were grayed out here at the bottom because only this item is being utilized in that operation. Based on my routings, NetSuite knows that only the first item is used in this first step. However, if I expand it into the second step, then this additional item is now being utilized, and then I can consume that item here. Again, we're utilizing backflush in this scenario, so that item is being consumed in this scenario, and then I can input that information on that quantity that's being utilized, submit the inventory detail for that inventory item. This one is using both bins and statuses. So I would select the bin and status of that item that I used. I can see how much I have available and say, yes, I am using 9 of those in this scenario, and I would do the same thing for the next line. If instead I wanted to say I started on 1 and I completed 3, I want to track and say that we completed all of them. You can see it now opens up all of the inventory items here. And if I put a completed quantity in here, then I do need to input an inventory detail for this assembly item because it does use serial and lot numbers. So now this is me telling NetSuite I have completed, again, just to show, I did this pretty quickly, but if I were to say completed quantity is 1, that's telling NetSuite I created this assembly. This assembly has been built. Pull the components from inventory, these components here, I've completed it. And this is the inventory detail for now that new assembly item that I have created. And of course, if that assembly item is not lot numbered or serial numbered or using inventory statuses, then you would not need to configure that inventory detail. Then if you were to, again, just real quickly to show it, enter completion, it's the same page, you have the same situation here, but now backslash is not checked. But you have the same situation here to go through and determine what operations you have completed. Now again, backslash means that you are also consuming the inventory. And since we're not using backslash, this is telling NetSuite that these tasks have been completed, but not that the inventory has been pulled. You would do that through other phases of the process. All right, and then the last option here, the issue component, is basically similar to if you were, or actually what it does is it moves the inventory into WIP, into work in process. So we can see it creates a work order issuance of these items and pulls that into your work in process. Okay, I'm gonna stop here for a second before I get into, I'll go into outsourced manufacturing next. I see the chat.
Sarah, real quick, we should probably take a 5-minute break as well if you want to answer a few questions, and then we'll take a 5-minute break.
I love it. Okay, let's see. It seems a couple of questions were answered. Yes, so the production start and end dates, exactly. You would use that to generate a production schedule. Let's see. Margie made a great call out that it could be an extra module to purchase. Let's see. Does backslash allow you to account for overconsumption? I believe you would be able to. I think I would be able to input a value greater than the amount that is on the work order. I think I could put in 10 here if I wanted to. I can test it and we'll figure it out together. I believe I can now. We'll just make sure. I'll pull that out. Okay, we'll try that again. Oh, 10. Yep, so it can allow for overconsumption. I was able to save it with 10 as opposed to the 9, and then it will pull that 10 from inventory as opposed to the 9 then. Okay, and yes, well, I guess, Barton, I believe that the meeting recordings will be posted. Yeah, Margie said so. Okay. Yes, let us take a 5-minute break and we will come back and talk about outsourced manufacturing next. Perfect. All right, everyone. Next topic I'm going to cover is outsourced manufacturing. And I actually did an outsourced manufacturing demo for a now RSM client not too long ago. So it does work. People do purchase it. Ultimately, what outsourced manufacturing is that it allows you to manage your subcontracted manufacturing processes by purchasing outsourced assembly production from vendors. So ultimately what it's doing is saying, we have assembly items and we don't want to build them, so we are going to have someone else build them. Oftentimes it's done for cost purposes or inventory availability. And the outsourced manufacturing assemblies can include your own inventory, as well as inventory from the vendor and production charges. So it really gives you a good overview of your costing, because you're able to see how much of it was your own inventory, how much of it was inventory you purchased from the vendor, and also costing for the actual charge of the outsourced manufacturing. So I'm going to take us to a item that I use on outsourced manufacturing. It's a cylinder that's being produced overseas in Thailand. And let's go look at the assembly, or the assembly revision that's being utilized here. So this revision utilizes a Y splitter valve that is our item. This is representing our item that is being consumed from our inventory. And then that way, once it's built, it's removing that from our inventory, as well as a assembly charge item that represents the charge of the item from the vendor, as well as any of the charge that they include. So this outsourced assembly charge can be, it of course would be different per scenario. Like I said, in this scenario, it's associated with this vendor, and it is intended to depict the cost of the inventory that's coming from the vendor, as well as the charge from the vendor for doing the assembly process. So let's say, you know, the actual inventory item is $10 and the cost of assembly is $15. It's all lumped together here because you don't really need to know the inventory, you know, the actual inventory you're getting from the vendor, because it's not your inventory, it's never your inventory, but you are purchasing it from them. So you want to make sure that you are costing it included in your costs, but you don't need to know and break it out, you know, the charge for the assembly separate from the item. All right, so, but we do have the one for our item shown here. Let's see, I think that's everything I wanted to show on this finished cylinder record. To utilize outsourced manufacturing, it does require a outsourced manufacturing location. So I've already kind of alluded to it multiple times. I have a CMO Thailand location. And again, when you are viewing your item inventory levels, you are able to see your inventory levels associated with that location as well. On top of needing a outsourced manufacturing location, you also need an outsourced vendor record and a charge item for that outsourcing and an assembly item. So those are the 4 things that you need to be able to utilize outsourced manufacturing outside of, you know, the functionality, of course. Is there a question? Okay. So let's actually go.
Well, actually, there is a question
okay.
on the chat, but I think that was just someone accidentally hit unmute. There is a question there. If you want to wait till the end of this to answer those questions, that way we don't have to interrupt you. Is that a better way to do it? To wait till you finish sort of the outsourcing? Okay, we'll just do that.
Yeah, I think that works great. Okay, perfect. So how this would then work after you've done the appropriate setup for the outsourced manufacturing is you would then enter a purchase order. There is a different form to be utilized for outsourced manufacturing. So you need to make sure that you are selecting the outsourced purchase order, letting that page refresh, and using a outsourced manufactured vendor. So we'll put that CMO Thailand in here. It didn't like that for whatever reason. Oh, that's why. Oh, the location is CMO Thailand. That's my mistake. All right, outsource manufacturer Thailand. It has to be a outsourced vendor, again, using the outsourced form. Otherwise, it's a pretty standard purchase order. You can put your classification in, of course, but then you want to put in your items. It is going to request a assembly item, of course, because outsourced manufacturing is assuming that there is a assembly being created. So we'll put in that 5-pound finished cylinder here. And then you can also, you'll see that it's pulling in that item for the outsourced assembly charge as well, because that's what you're actually being charged for this item, for this purchase order, right? So remember, this $35 represents the cost of the item from the vendor that they are using to assemble, as well as a charge for them doing the assembly. However, because the bill of materials revision also includes one of our inventory items, it's still going to associate that as well with this assembly, and it will remove that from inventory. All right, so that $35 is brought in here again because that's what we are paying for this. Because we are not paying for our item, we're just paying the vendor for their item and their assembly charge. All right. Yesterday, I was having issues upon saving. It might error out, and if it does, I have one already saved that we can take a look at. But so far, it's looking good. I was getting one of those frustrating, we have seen an unexpected error, please contact support. But it worked. Fantastic. All right. So what this has now done is this creates a purchase order that we can then receive against in the future. But what it also does now is it creates a work order to represent the assembly being done outsourced. So from here, upon receiving and building, that is when then it pulls this Y splitter valve. Remember, this is our actual inventory here. It then pulls that from our inventory and no longer makes it available to us from our location. Now, this is honestly the use case that the customer I recently sold to utilized. So it utilized, again, one of their own items, their own physical inventory, one from the vendor, and then a charge. Does not have to go that way. It does not have to necessarily include all three of those components, but this is a scenario that in which it is using those three, just to kind of showcase the capability. Now this work order is built. This item would no longer be considered our available inventory. And then from there, you have your purchase order that you would then receive against once you receive that assembly. All right, so now we can open the chat. What were the 4 items required for outsourced manufacturing? It looks like, yep, Betsy answered that. Thank you. Let's see, outsourced manufacturing question. Can I use the same vendor for outsourced items and standard purchase items as long as they are on different purchase orders, or do I need to create a second vendor? I see what Jerry's saying, and that does make sense, but almost part of me wonders if you still might actually be able to use the same vendor. Again, let's just take a quick field trip together, might as well. We'll try to create a standard purchase order for the outsourced manufacturer Thailand vendor, and we'll go from there. Okay, so it does give me a warning that in order to use outsourced manufacturing, I need to switch to an outsourcing form, but it still may let me save it. We'll just check. We'll create it for one of our locations. Again, we're just taking a field trip together here. We're going to figure this out together. Let's put our 5-pound finished cylinder in there. Add it and save it. Let's see. Yeah, it looks like, I'm just going to make sure it's not the prior one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It let me create one for the outsourced vendor for a non-outsourced. It didn't create a work order or anything. So looks like you can do it. Okay. I think we're good on questions then here. This is a separate feature, yes. I think it may be included in like the supply chain module, but it's definitely not standard NetSuite. What I had to do with the item to make it outside process. Yes, I can go back to the item record. There's actually a couple things that you need to do on the item record to set it as outsourced. The first one is setting it as a location to the CMO location or to the outsourced manufacturing. And then you also have to tag that vendor. Or actually, no, I guess I thought I did, but I guess you don't necessarily have to assign the vendor to it. And I believe you also have to, actually, no, then you just input the bill of materials revision to determine what is included in that item. And honestly, I think the big thing is just making sure that it's tagged to that location and then using this location when associating that item to an order. I have a really strong PowerPoint on outsourced manufacturing that I may be able to distribute as well. That could be helpful. Show the BOM revision. Yes, I can do so. All right, yes. I will make sure that I can distribute it, Dan, and I can send it to some of the board members to get that sent out. If you outsource and assemble the same item in-house, would you need 2 separate assembly items? Oh, wow, these are good questions. I think, yes, you would, Rachel. I think you would. I know that's not the strongest vote of confidence, but I believe you would. And unfortunately, I can't test it right now to see.
I don't think you do. I think you just need a secondary routing, secondary BOM.
Okay. Oh, that would make sense because then you could just have a different revision. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
More than a revision, it needs to be a separate bill of materials assigned to the item. I need one for outsource and one for not.
That makes sense. This is great. Everybody knows just as much NetSuite. So yes, you do. Oh, yes. So that is a criteria for using outsourced manufacturing. You do need to be using advanced BOM. And I think that's called out in this PowerPoint that I have. So hopefully that'll help too. Okay, so we are now on the second end of our transactions overview. So we're just gonna wrap things up with receiving an order to start things off, building an actual work order and inventory transfers and so on. And then we'll finish up things with reports and dashboards, and you can stop hearing my voice finally. All right, so let's actually receive an order. So I wanted to revisit that order that we looked at earlier. So we have PO 395 that we're gonna go back to. We generated this earlier on, back when we were young and bright-eyed. And let's receive this purchase order now. Nothing crazy here, just showcasing this part of the process when it comes to inventory management, receiving your inventory. A purchase order is a non-posting transaction. So the item receipt is when you are actually when in NetSuite's eyes, you are receiving that inventory. And as I mentioned earlier on, that's also when the costing occurs for the item, is upon receipt. Upon receiving an item, you determine the location in which you are receiving that item. If you have multiple lines in the purchase order, you can receive some lines to different locations if necessary. Landed cost is another feature of NetSuite. I'm not going to be showcasing that here today, but you can also be capturing your landed cost at time of item receipt. And then configuring the inventory detail. For instance, I talked about quarantine earlier. Let's say all these items came in damaged and you wanted to input them to a quarantine location. You can select that location and then input the inventory detail as a bad status. I don't have a bad status, but you could then input a bad status. So if you wanted to, like we talked about earlier, kind of link the two and have a bad status associated with the quarantine location, that's how you would do so. Receive to that quarantine location, determine the status as bad. And then, of course, just determining the quantity for which you are receiving from here. As you probably already know, NetSuite can allow overages if you would like to. There is a setting to allow overages on item receipt. Otherwise, you are not able to. And then upon saving the item receipt, that's when that inventory hits your inventory level. So we will have 10 more available in the location of in the California location of this MacBook Pro at this time. And then of course, from here, you're gonna go and build this and then go on and so forth, but you have your procure to pay session in March of 2023. So you'll hear more about that then. All right, next up, building work orders. So I showed you the building of a work order from the perspective of WIP and routing, which again is different from a standard work order. So we'll go back to a standard work order that is not using WIP and routing, where you have the option to create builds. Now I set it in my account so that the default status of my work orders are set to released, but you can go through a planning process to say, you know, this work order has not been released. It's not in your production schedule at that point. It's just a planned work order until it's been released to build it. I oftentimes, honestly, as a consultant, I feel like most times people just set it to release, but you do have that option for using a planned status. And then I believe that under the manufacturing tab, then you have that option to mark your orders as firmed or then released. So you can have an additional step of firmed as well. All right, upon creating build, then what this is now doing is this is me telling NetSuite that I am pulling this inventory from my location. That inventory is no longer available at the time that I am completing this assembly build. I can input here saying what I am consuming if it's different than these amounts here. And again, input those inventory details. We're just gonna pull from these here. I have just enough, fortunately, in that bin. Hopefully I'm not going too fast here. Ultimately, what I'm doing, configuring the inventory detail for these items. Because they use bins and inventory statuses, I have to do this. So I am just inputting that I am removing 6 good quality items, the 2-layer copper item from bin A001. All right, so upon completing that, inputting that information, oh, I need to input this value for the assembly as well to say, it's similar to what I showed you earlier. Again, this is only required because this assembly item does require serial numbers and inventory status. This would not be required otherwise. But now I'm saying that I have this item available. This is a real item that is now created and assembled, and that's why I had to create it as with a serial number in that scenario. So now in NetSuite's eyes, we have no longer these quantities available in our components, and now we have one of the ASS Flex circuit board assemblies available now. However, it is committed to an order, I believe. So, but now that inventory level has increased for that assembly in some form. And now this work order is set as built. You do have the option also to unbuild assemblies too. Unbuild assemblies basically could just say, you know, let's say you didn't use it for whatever reason, you can unbuild that assembly, and then it will put those components back into your inventory levels at that time. Let's see. Questions. After you've clicked save and bill, is it possible to edit the item receipt to add another item so it can be billed on one invoice? We'll take a field trip and check that out, that question, Suzanne. I think the answer is no, but we will check together. So we want to go back and edit the item receipt to add another item before we build the purchase order. Does not look like I even have the option to add another item here. Maybe there's a setting that allows you to do that. I'm kind of spitballing here. I have a feeling not, so it does not look like that's possible. Yeah, Alex agrees with that. Okay, next question. Can NetSuite notify IR number to a vendor automatically after IR creation? Yeah, I mean, what I would do in that scenario is I would just set up a simple workflow to just send an email to the vendor and source that item receipt number. I don't think there's like a setting or a native way to do that, but I think a simple workflow would be able to achieve that. Is there an IR report? I actually don't think there is. If I see purchases, I don't think there's a specific report for item receipts, but that's something that, you know, I personally, I love leveraging saved searches. So I would maybe use a saved search for that, just to pull that information, or you can create a custom report, but it doesn't look like there's a native one. Awesome. Okay. Lots of input here. Thank you, everybody, for supporting the chat. Looks like, yeah, you can view, that's a great point. Yeah, on the item record, you can view all the item receipts. So for instance, if I go back to this item, going right on back to, remember what I called the mini reports on the item record, I can sort the transactions here by item receipts if I would like to see that. So again, I'm on the item record on the related records tab, and I can sort by item receipt. So honestly, that's probably what you're looking for right there. So great call out. Thank you. Is there a way to differentiate IRs created from inventory receipts versus those created by customer returns? I would probably just maybe create like a custom field to do that. Created from field. Awesome. Alex, you're rocking it. And David, everybody. Yep. Okay. Awesome. Okay. We built a work order. Next up, let's talk about inventory transfers. So there's two ways NetSuite allows for inventory transfers. And actually, I'm being a little confusing there because one is called inventory transfer and one is called transfer order, which are two different things. Now, I have the option to transfer inventory, which is ultimately just a record in NetSuite to say, like, this inventory is going from here to here. You can use this to transfer between locations, as you can see here. Let's choose a subsidiary to do this pretty quickly. Let's say we're moving from California to the Colorado location. I would select my items and input the quantity that's being transferred. Upon saving this record, this inventory transfer, that exactly is immediately when that inventory levels are adjusted. So upon saving this inventory transfer, the inventory is subtracted from California and added to Colorado. So it's just a simple, like, it's pretty much just like an accounting transaction to say that this inventory is being moved. Now, the other end of things, the transfer order, I remember very early on in my consulting career, somebody who was way smarter than me explained to me that he used transfer orders to be best used when that transfer requires the use of a truck, basically. If that transfer is going across states or it's going to take multiple days or hours, if it's going on a truck, that's when he believes transfer orders are best to be used. And I've found that to be pretty consistent in how I've seen people in the industry use it. Transfer orders, on the contrary, what it does, I'll show you one. A transfer order actually creates, it's kind of like, in a way, a sales order and purchase order, because then you have to fulfill, oh, not approved transfer orders. You then have to fulfill the order. So then you can input shipping information, truck information, for instance, and then the other location actually has to receive that order. So it's a lot more drawn out process. But again, using that mentor's scenario, if it's going on a truck, use a transfer order, I think is pretty reasonable in that scenario. So a transfer order, just to then show you this, on the contrary, again, remember when you created the inventory transfer, as soon as you save that transfer record, it hits your inventory levels. The transfer order is not as instantaneous. So we're going to say that we're going to transfer to Colorado again from California. We'll notice the status is pending fulfillment. So, right, it's like a sales order is being created to then fulfill. Let's put an item in here. Which one do I want to choose? We'll put in this monitor. Perfect. We have quantity available. All right. So, oh, yes. I have a shipping integration set up in this account. I'm just going to override the shipping cost real quickly. But again, if you were actually shipping out this order, you would want to input that shipping cost into this, of course. Let's save it with just a 0 shipping cost in this scenario. Also on the transfer order, if there's a transfer price to be tracked, you can input that here. I just kept it as a $0 change. But now we can see that this is in a status of pending fulfillment. So at this point, no inventory levels have been adjusted. Upon selecting fulfill, then we would just go through the fulfillment process like you would fulfill a sales order. Your pick, pack, and ship process can also come into play here. Again, you're just normal fulfillment here. And then to just try to just be quick on time here, just to show you then a transfer order that has been fulfilled. I think I should have another one, I'm hoping, available. Ultimately, once you've then fulfilled the transfer order, then you have that option to, you'll see, then it'll be in a status of pending receipt for you to then receive that inventory into the other location. So at time of fulfillment, the inventory leaves the initiating location, but then upon receipt is when it then hits the inventory of the other location. So a much more drawn out process than just doing an inventory transfer. Next up, I want to talk about inventory adjustments. Inventory adjustments is similar to transfer orders in that there are 2 ways to do inventory adjustments. You have adjust inventory and you have adjust inventory worksheet. Also, a very similar result, right? This is how you adjust your inventory, but they act differently in the sense that when you create an inventory adjustment, let me just show you, let me input a subsidiary. So I'll have the ability to add an item. We'll add, one is fine and dandy. All right, so what this is doing right here is if I put in 10 and save this, this is telling NetSuite that I am adjusting my quantity of this item at this location by 10. It doesn't worry about the current inventory levels. It just says, okay, we're going to add 10 to that. So we actually have 25 on hand. So the new quantity would be 35. Of course, if you're tracking cereal bins or anything like that, that would then be required to input that inventory detail. But this is just saying I am adjusting the quantity by this amount. I can also do it by a negative number as well too. It now wants me to configure the inventory detail for it. But now we can see that new quantity is 10. So it's ultimately taking that adjust by quantity on the quantity on hand and adjusting it. Now the difference between then the inventory adjustment worksheet or adjust inventory worksheet is that this now excludes what your current values are. So this overrides them basically. So let me choose a subsidiary. Again, California, there we go. So what now this is doing is it doesn't matter how many you have, I am telling NetSuite what I have now. So if I were to put 10 in here again, instead of adding 10 to what I currently have, this is telling NetSuite I have 10. And upon saving this, my inventory levels are going to be adjusted to show that and say I have 10 of this available as opposed to adding or removing 10 from my current values. So that's the difference between the two. So they each have their own way of being utilized. You know, for instance, for cutover data, I typically would use the inventory worksheet because in case there was any like testing inventory levels, for instance, or fake inventory levels in there, I could just override them. So for cutover data, I would use the inventory worksheet pretty exclusively. But then for other inventory adjustments, you know, you can use the adjust inventory. Inventory worksheet is also great for, let's say, like a cycle count, for instance, or just a regular inventory count. And you're like, these are the actual inventory levels, override within the system currently and put these new levels in. Okay, I will open the chat again to see what we've got here. On the transfer price, can explain use item cost as transfer cost. Yeah, so if you wanted to associate a cost with the transfer, it would ultimately, and you select use item cost as transfer cost. Actually, I can probably just try to pull this up to give us a visual here. So you can pull from the item record itself using the item cost. It would pull from the purchase price or the average costing, whatever method is being utilized. It would pull that in to utilize this. So let's see. There's the option to put transfer price. Where is even the option to use? Oh, there it is. Use item cost as transfer cost. Yeah, it would just use the item cost, or instead you can input a specific transfer price that's different than the item cost here. The transfer order is useful when you want to plan and direct the picking transaction between warehouses. Definitely. Yeah, so exactly what Betsy's saying. I kind of skimmed over it, but when you're then fulfilling the transfer order, you can go through your pick, pack, and ship process. Your normal warehouse functions that you utilize can then be used for those transfer order fulfillments. Are there settings to post the transfer order only to the inventory account? Notice intercompany transfers use the inventory accounts only. So that's what's recommended if it's going from one facility to another within the subsidiary. I'm going to be honest with you, Julie. I don't know if I know the answer to that one. Once it gets into accounting specifics and accounts, I have a harder time with that because my accounting background isn't as strong as I'd like it to be. When you make an inventory adjustment, is there a GL posting made? Yes, I believe there would be. We can check to make sure. Again, take a little field trip. I'm assuming that's an inventory, adjust inventory as opposed to the inventory adjustment. We can check the GL of that.
Oh, I hear you. You can hear me now. I can hear you because you started this.
There was no GL impact for that because it was 0. You need to pick another inventory adjustment.
Oh yeah, because the value. Okay, fair. Okay, good point. Good point. Thank you. There we go. So Dale, there's the GL impact of the inventory adjustment. On the inventory worksheet, if the quantity is left blank, does that update to 0 when saved or leave the quantity as is? I don't believe it, Chris, it would even let you save it with the quantity being blank. It would then want you to put in 0 as opposed to blank. I personally don't know a use case either, Margie, for using transfer price. Inventory worksheet does not work. Yes, exactly. That's a great call out, Dan. There's some other limitations to adjust inventory or just inventory worksheet. I can't remember exactly, but like, I know like if you have serialized inventory, I think one works over the other. There's definitely, I should have honestly just known these ahead of this, but there is some gotchas to the adjust inventory versus adjust inventory worksheet. The one Dan pointed out is a fantastic one. Margie, yeah, that's transfer is good if you use landed cost. Absolutely. Okay, I think I'm caught up. Okay, everybody, well, we are almost done. We're just gonna gloss over some reporting and dashboards. So I have a couple dashboards that I wanna showcase that are just the out of the box what I got with my demo environment here. So as my role entails doing demonstrations, I have demo environments for different solution sets. So I get these from NetSuite and they come with some data, but they are intended to reflect an actual, purchased account. So for instance, this is a Suite Success North America Manufacturing Premium account specifically. So these roles are specific to that, but as you know, depending on your solution set, you get those pre-built roles based on the Suite Success edition. So first one I wanted to point out is the production manager role here, just to showcase that dashboard. Don't have a ton to say here. Like I said, this is just a standard dashboard that came with this role. And I'll show you on the contrary, a warehouse operator, because it's going to be a little bit different in the sense of what we see here in the tiles, for instance. But this does kind of bring us full transfer or full circle. As we can see here, we have access to our inventory transfers, to creating work orders, inventory adjustments. A lot of those transactions that we went through, the production manager has quick access to. Reminders that are relevant. So that items to order page that we were on before, the user here, the production manager, has a quick link to that page right here for reordering that items exactly where we were before for creating those purchase orders. So leveraging the dashboard reminders. Also, we're able to see our capacity by work center. Again, bringing it full circle. We had our work centers that were assigned to our manufacturing routing. So we can see that capacity by week here, can drill into this data to get more information. Our shortcuts are relevant to the production. Key performance indicators are production related. So it's showing us this month versus last month, our value of our completed work orders versus our value of released work orders, for instance. Our inventory value this month to last month. If you're not already aware, setting up things like these key performance indicators are simple enough for an end user to do. I can add additional standard KPIs or even custom KPIs here. And I can change the date range as well for which I want to see this data. So rather than inventory end of this month to end of last month, if I want to see inventory today versus yesterday, for instance, I can change that date range very easily here. I can see some production values. Again, very comparative deep dive data here. I can see my number of work orders today compared to this week, compared to this month, compared to last month, this fiscal quarter today, again, so on. Value of completed work orders, a KPI meter for that, monthly inventory trend, the work orders that have been released. Pretty beautiful dashboard here. Credit to NetSuite on that one. Next one, warehouse operator. Similar but different. The tiles, I believe, are a bit different, and some of the reminders, of course, are going to be different. So right now, the warehouse operator, right, has a cycle counts to approve, and inbound containers and assemblies to order and orders to ship, right? It's warehouse operation more specific. Their KPI meter is more so on the number of fulfillments as opposed to the value of assemblies or work orders completed. You can now see a link to late POs and transfer orders. Your comparative data has some similarities. I can see my late shipped orders. How many of those? Apparently I've had quite a few. My shipping costs, again, monthly inventory trends, warehouse operations specifically, value of my sales orders, number of sales orders, and again, in many different buckets of comparative data. This is called a KPI scorecard. And these have a couple different options for them. So by default, this one gets the warehouse operator, but there are other KPI scorecards. The procurement one I think is cool. It shows you like number of returns you've had, the value of those returns, number of late POs, things like that. And you can see that you can dynamically change them. So maybe if you have a dashboard that you're currently using, you might not have even realized you can change that KPI scorecard to consume different data. That's how you would go about doing that. And also you can actually have your contract manufacturer have access as well. So this is my contract manufacturer for the CMO Thailand. So they can see any transfer orders or work orders that have occurred. The use case for transfer orders here could be, for instance, remember during my outsourced manufacturing section, there was the assembly included one of my own inventory items, that valve. So maybe I am doing that through a transfer order. I could also, maybe I'm just sending my inventory to the vendor. I mean, different ways to go about that, but I just wanted to call it out since transfer orders are called out here. Work orders to build, again, very specific just to that contract manufacturer. To wrap things up on the reporting side, I showcased, again, I love to say it, the mini reports on the item records. You can always view a lot of valuable information on the item record itself, but also, of course, the NetSuite package comes with reports that are relevant here. For instance, we have, I think one that everybody likes is let me go to inventory. You have your current inventory snapshot to give you an overview by location of the inventory you have for each of your items. You can change this by location, or you can filter it by only showing you the items at or below their reorder point. But again, as you can see, you have a column for each of your locations to give you that overview of your value and amounts that you have of those items per location. As you're probably already aware, you can always export these as well if it's easier to consume outside of NetSuite, or if you're distributing it to someone else. You have the options for export down here, and then as well as emailing and printing reports. Current inventory snapshot is strong. Let's see, also have inventory back order report if you want to see information on what inventory is back ordered and what transactions they are back ordered from. So then in this scenario, for instance, I can see finished product. I have 3 back orders, but if I wanted to then prioritize fulfilling the oldest one, I can very easily see this first one here is a date sooner than 7/22. Same for the rest of these, for instance. So I can see those transactions here. Let's see. I guess real quickly, also just like for the recording purposes, I'll just hover over the inventory and items reporting currently, just so you can kind of see some of the other options that come. so I can see reports on my items pending fulfillment, my turnover, or my inventory valuations. There is demand planning report too. We didn't get into demand planning today, but of course that kind of it's an overarching theme of NetSuite inventory management. So there is some demand planning reporting as well. And then one of the last things I wanted to show as well, it's not necessarily a report, but still gives you good information, is your component where used inquiry. If you wanted to see, I'll just showcase this to you. Let's choose a subsidiary. If I wanted to see where a component was being used and how many assemblies and what assemblies, for instance, let's do the light bulb because it'll just show us lamp. Put it in there, and now you can see what assemblies it is tied to and some inventory information on that. So I definitely had people ask me about something like this when I was a consultant. So it's not a report, but it lives under transactions manufacturing. And then again, it's called component where used inquiry. Okay, I think we have a couple more questions. Any idea on how to build an inventory in transit value as a KPI scorecard? You know, if I sat down and did it, I might be able to, but maybe someone else on the call has come across that in the past. I personally haven't built one, so unfortunately I don't have a quick answer on how to do that. When I try to create custom reports, how can I see or find a field from another document, a PO, work order, IR? What you might want to consider, I haven't worked with it a ton myself, I'll be honest, but the analytics workbook I think is pretty good at like merging records. So if you wanted to be pulling in from purchase orders and work orders and item receipts, that might be a way to try that. That's just, it's not super sound advice. I haven't used the analytics workbook a ton, but I have heard that, you know, for merging multiple data sets, that could be a good option. Bill of materials inquiry is a good one. Thank you, Roy. Yes. So bill of materials inquiry, if you want to see all the components of your assemblies with sub-assemblies. Yeah, I did not talk about sub-assemblies today. That's a whole other beast, but you can have sub-assemblies of your assemblies that can be included in that process. Yeah, I would imagine that would be clunky, as you're saying. Is there a report like the backorder report that also shows any POs tied to that backorder as well as their respective ETA dates? That sounds like it'd be a cool report, but I don't think it necessarily exists currently. You could probably customize the backorder report, maybe to include that. I can't promise that, but maybe that's how I would go about doing that. But there is not a report currently that exists that does that. But supply chain, okay, perfect. That's some of that functionality. Awesome. How about an inventory quantity by bin where I can pull the cost, come up with a valuation with a calculation, works in the safe search. We wanted this with as an as of date. Billion, you might be able to achieve that. No. I don't really know, Jillian, to be honest. Maybe someone else has come across that. Okay.
It might be a modification with the stock ledger.
Yeah.
What was that?
Okay.
The stock ledger will give you values by a backward in time if you run it back in time. So
Stock ledger? Okay, thank you.
Stock ledger.
Okay. Well, I don't know how I did it, but I ended exactly on time. So that concludes what we're going over today. So thank you for your participation, everybody. It's been a fun time. Feel free to reach out to me, LinkedIn, wherever. Again, I work at RSM. But thank you for having me here today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah, for that great presentation, and thanks for everybody's participation. It always makes it more meaningful for everybody. I'm going to go ahead and post the checkout, the CPE checkout keyword now. So I'm going to share my screen. I'll leave this up here for a minute or so. The URL is, I'm going to post that in the chat window again. I can find that for your CPE checkout. There is the link again. So I'll leave this up. Checkout code word is winter. So that's the end of the CPE session. But we still have more to come. We have, I'm going to talk about Suite World 2022. Then we're going to have a tip and trick and then our open forum. So don't leave quite yet. All right, CPE checkout code winter, going once, going twice. All right. All right, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to bring up a presentation that I have for the Suite World update. Just a moment to get that up here. Okay. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Corey Anderson of Corey Anderson Consulting. I'm an independent consultant. I also am the president of the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group. I attended Suite World this year, and it was a great conference. It was a sold out conference this year, and I did attend last year as well, and it was the first conference after the pandemic started. And this year was great. I mean, there were 14,000 attendees. You know, Oracle, since acquiring NetSuite, has done some really amazing things, I think, and there's a lot of really great things that are coming out these days. And so I'm going to go through some of those, just some of the highlights. I can't obviously go through everything that I experienced there, but there were some independent or some smaller sessions where I got some great information. There's specifically one on saved search and advanced PDF printing that had some really amazing techniques. There is a slide deck, and I'll show that slide deck here at the end of this. But all of the presentations from Suite World, at least the PowerPoint presentations, are down. Well, they're PDFs now, but you can download them. If you just go to Suite Answers and you do a search for Suite World, it'll come up with Suite World 2022 presentations, and it'll take you to a page where you can look at all of the presentations and download those PDFs, which I think is pretty cool. I don't know if they did, if the video, well, they're not all recorded. So yeah, I think it's just the PDF presentations. Anyway, so I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to talk about some of the new features that are coming out that NetSuite highlighted at Suite World. And the first one is called NetSuite CPQ. And CPQ, if you're not familiar with it, stands for Configure, Price, and Quote. And usually this is an advanced tool that is used in CR systems such as Salesforce. So I think up until now, Salesforce was pretty much the only or the main place to get a CPQ process, but NetSuite's rolling it out and has it available in NetSuite now. So just some of the features of CPQ. First of all, they have this configurator tool. So it enables salespeople and customers to select features and options for your products and services and apply customizable business rules to make sure that every configuration is correct. And basically the point of that is so that you can't, it has these rules that you can't put in incompatible products together within that configurator. So that's a cool feature. I think probably a big part of it. It has dynamic pricing, so you can leverage standard pricing data in NetSuite as a starting point and then apply rules-based pricing based on the options selected in the product or service configured. Those dynamic prices are then available on the quote and the order to complete the transaction. So so you use the dynamic pricing, and I haven't used this module. It's brand new. I don't know anybody that's used it yet, so I can't really answer any detailed questions about it. So anyway, the dynamic pricing, and then that flows into the quotes. So there's this live quotes feature. It gives salespeople the ability to deliver interactive emails with quotes that end customers can interact with, acknowledging that they want to move the quote to an order and delivering that message to the sales rep in NetSuite CRM. So it's a live quotes feature. Sounds really interesting. I'd love to hear from anybody. If anybody has used CPQ yet, we'd love to hear about it. Proposals. So the CPQ proposal generator gives sales reps a quick and easy way to provide customers with a proposal they can sign off on. And as you can see, you can design. I guess you can create these designs and have these templates, and they look really nice. So it looks like a very nice professional proposal option. Then you have this bill of materials and routing. So it dynamically creates a bill of materials and routings based on built-in business logic in the CPQ engine. It delivers BOM and routing instructions specific to the configured product to be produced with the correct materials and the right steps to complete the work order. So that's, I think, really interesting, dynamically creating BOMs and routings based on how the customer has configured the order. Sounds really interesting. Then they have this guided selling feature, which is a series of questions and answers that you can configure to bring clarity to what the customer needs and results in recommended products and services that may be configurable or standard items. So this guided selling, and this is going to tie into, I don't know where that would be available, like if it's in a customer center or if it has to be on a Suite Advanced website, but that's kind of some questions to be answered later, I suppose. 3D visualization, generate 3D dimensional browser-based interactive product visualizations, empowering salespeople and online buyers to see dynamic 3D rendered images of customized configured products that they're selling or buying. So that's pretty, I guess, forward thinking, having these 3D visualization tool, that's the kind of stuff that I guess I'd expect to see in this configurator. And then they have the e-commerce integration. NetSuite CPQ is unified natively with NetSuite Suite Commerce. Integrations are also available with other e-commerce systems, including Shopify and Adobe Commerce. And I'm not sure if these can be integrated with any other systems outside of these. It would probably require a custom integration from NetSuite to an external system. So they probably have a limited number of options for the e-commerce integration at this point. So that's the CPQ. So pretty cool feature coming out. NetSuite Ship Central. This is another thing that they were talking about. So it's a new mobile application that enhances the entire packing to delivery process to expedite shipments and minimize costs. Together with NetSuite WMS, Ship Central provides end-to-end capabilities for picking, packing, and shipping products. Some of the features of it: combine multiple shipments, work across multiple shipping carriers, print and reprint labels at any point, track packages in real time, customize ship processes. And NetSuite Ship Central is, my understanding, please don't quote me on it because I'm not 100% sure, but my understanding is that it's part of NetSuite WMS and it does not require any additional licenses. The CPQ presentation, well, these slides will be available on our website when we're done, Betsy, but you can also just Google NetSuite CPQ and it takes you to a site where they give you a lot of detail about it.
Corey?
Yes.
This is Gary DeWill again.
Yes.
Like I said earlier, I'm with NetSuite. I built the demo accounts for manufacturing and food and beverage, and I just wanted to update this group that CPQ is now included in some of our demo accounts. with guided selling, and there's also CPQ with the commerce integration available. So for those on the call that are partners at Demo NetSuite, those features are available.
Excellent. That's great. Thanks so much for letting us know, and thanks for being here and adding a lot of value today. Great. So NetSuite Ship Central. So one of the themes that I've seen. So I started using NetSuite as an end user 10 or more years ago, and there was no built-in WMS, there was no built-in shipping functions, and it's really interesting to see how NetSuite is progressing in this. So they're always just kind of adding these extra features that are critical to those processes. So you can do everything in NetSuite. Ultimately, I think is a long-term goal. I think one of the things about this type of product to kind of consider is that it's probably going to cover basic to entry level to mid-size requirements, but when you start getting it into very complicated shipping requirements and very, very high volume, it may not quite fit. And so there's these other shipping platforms out there like ShipHawk or I can't remember all of them right now. ShipStation, they have a good integration. Those kinds of platforms, but it's cool to see that they're doing it built into NetSuite. Okay, next one is NetSuite Workforce Management. So NetSuite Workforce Management allows businesses to eliminate multiple applications and spreadsheets by providing a single solution that streamlines scheduling and improves time and attendance tracking. So some of the key features of workforce management, and this is part of the Suite People module, I believe. So we have this scheduling, so you can create, edit, and reassign shifts in one place. So you have an employee scheduling process built right into NetSuite. Have a time and attendance module. Suite People Time Clock allows employees to punch in and out on an Android or an iOS mobile app with geotagging, or you can specify on-site Android or iOS tablets with a pin. And the other cool thing about this is, I didn't put it on here, but I read that there's a validation process built into the app so that you have to either use face recognition or thumbprint when you're doing a time entry, so that you couldn't have what's called like buddy time entry. So you have a friend enter time for you or something like that. So there's these built-in validation tools as part of that as well, which I think is pretty cool. Then we have wage calculations. So it'll automatically calculate hours, overtime, and holidays with the built-in wage rules engine. And then to wrap it all together, there's the analytics. So customizable dashboards allow you to organize and monitor your most important data at any point throughout the day without having to search in multiple places. So again, back in the day, I had a team of people and was trying to manage time entry and trying to figure out how to do that in NetSuite, and there was no really great way to do it. So NetSuite's always progressing and adding these tools that I think companies can really use. So workforce management sounds pretty awesome. And then NetSuite AP automation. This one kind of surprising to me, frankly. So if you're familiar with products such as Bill.com, where they do this bill capture through OCR or character recognition. So NetSuite's building all of this in and has a solution to do basically all of the same type of thing. So some of the features of the NetSuite AP automation, we have bill capture. Bills are scanned using AI, ML-based object detection and optical character recognition. Relevant details like vendor name, PO number, items ordered, quantity, pricing are then converted into digital text. Then NetSuite automatically creates a vendor bill record using AI-based and previous bill entries and pre-populates the appropriate fields. So you get this PDF, for example, and it's going to scan it and create a vendor bill automatically in NetSuite for you. Bill matching and approvals. Automated bill matching ensures vendor bills are 2- or 3-way matched with the associated purchase orders. You can obviously do some automated processes now without this, but this is going to kind of put it all together under one module. Payment automation. Vendor payments are processed through HSBC services with payment options of ACH, check, or virtual credit card. The payer's current bank can be used to fund payments. My understanding with this one is NetSuite is partnered with HSBC, so you have to use HSBC for this payment automation capability. Then payment reconciliation. Intelligent rules engine matches and reconciles virtual credit card charges while flagging discrepancies for further review by accounting staff. So again, helping to automate the whole AP process. And then the Suite Banking Center, and this is part of NetSuite's overarching Suite Banking theme that they're building out. So the Suite Banking Center gained full visibility into and control over transactions and real-time balances for HSBC online checking and credit card accounts. So in availability, NetSuite AP automation is now available in the US, and it, I don't know the details, but it should be a module that you purchase separately, unless anybody else knows different. And then John says, unfortunately, AP automation is currently US, so US dollar and English only. So, and one thing, John, to that point, is I was talking to somebody at Suite World, and I think what kind of the plan, how NetSuite rolls things out, is they get a product like this to a point where it is it's functional, right? They can start using it, they can start selling it, and then over time they keep building out and adding new features and functions to it. So I would fully expect that they'll add other multiple currencies to the process, other languages, but they get it out so that it works, and then they start building on it over time. And then Margie, Cash 360 is Cash 360 really a module you have to pay for? No, I think Cash 360 is free. It's a bundle. I think you just install it and configure it. But I don't. Did I say Cash 360?
Yeah, you did.
Sorry about that. That's weird.
She asked about Cash 360, and I agree with you. I think it's just a free Suite app.
Yeah, I apologize. Cash 360 is a free Suite app. That was like a Freudian slip, I guess. Okay, so the thing, I'm going to show one other thing real quick before I turn this over to Margie for her tip and trick. So can you see the PDF? I'm not sure if it overloads.
Yes, okay. Extending the functionality of your print templates.
Yeah. So the name of this session that I attended was Dr. Search and the Multiverse of Printing. And if Jillian Pearson is still on, this could add some tricks to your advanced PDF capabilities, and which are extensive.
You might just need to send that to me, Corey.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. So I'm not going to go through all of the details of this, but there were some things that they were showing in this presentation that were just kind of like mind-blowing of what you can do with these advanced PDF templates. I mean, they showed how to add a new font package so you can use customized fonts. They did this thing where you put this link and it changes the styling of the form dynamically. Like, anyway, there's this whole thing. So I'm going to post this on our website along with this meeting, and it is very impressive, the things that they could do. So and again, if you wanted to review any of the Suite World presentations, just do a search for Suite World 2022 in Suite Answers, and it will bring everything up for you. Okay, so that's it. That's all I have. Thank you for your time. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, Corey-Anderson3, or you can find me at the user group. And so one more thing I want to say, thank you to our meeting sponsor today, Message Media. Ryan had to drop off. So if you haven't done so already, text Rocky to 3185 and follow the prompts for your chance to win a $100 Visa gift card. Thank you again, Message Media, for sponsoring. All right, I am going to stop sharing and turn this over to Margie.
Thank you, Corey. And thank you for that rundown. Unfortunately, most of those things were add-on that you have to pay for, but I liked your last one, which we don't have to pay for. So,
right.
I attended the Sweet World on Air, and I promised that this would be under 5 minutes. So this is a very quick and hopefully valuable one that you can use. And it's like, oh my God, I never thought about that. So it's creating a professional signature for emails sent from NetSuite. And it's actually part of a much larger session. And this is the session number, and it is not posted. So hopefully someday they will be posting the on-air sessions. Maybe some of them are on there, but not this one. So for you that are not familiar with, okay, not familiar with the option that you have, you can actually create a signature box, just like you do in Outlook. You can create a signature box from your home page, from the set preferences. So the thing about this is that if you know about set preferences under the home icon, you have to do that. It is not something an administrator can set up for you. So you need to just go to that, go to the general tab, make sure that this is checked, the add signature to messages. And then over on the right, you see where this other arrow is pointing, there's a signature box where you can actually enter in for your signature for anything that you send out whenever you say email. So you email invoices to customers, you email purchase orders to vendors, or maybe you're just having communication with your customers or vendors or someone. So, and notice that I've entered it. It looks really nice and clean. And in here, you can put HTML tags, but what we're going to show today is that you don't have to know any HTML in order to do this. So the value of this is that if you're an administrator and you have, 50 employees, they can each set up their own, provided they have the right permission. Or if they don't have the permission, you can always they can tell you what it should look like, and you can do this yourself and send them the source code. So looking at this, and please note what I have in my signature pad and the signature box, because that's what you're going to be seeing in a few minutes. Also, you have a nickname and you have the from email address that shows that you enter in here. So this is what, from the prior page, what the email will look like. Okay, you see the nickname and the email address, but the signature box, that does not look very cool. There are no line breaks, but it did know that this was an email, so that's positive. But what I'm going to be showing you today is how to take this, the one that you entered in previously, and then make it into a formatting it so it actually will end up looking like this. So basically, I just took the one that I showed in that first screen where I entered it in, and all I did was bold this, and then it put in the line breaks. So no need to learn HTML, and that's why I like this so much. So no matter who your functional users are, you can easily they can easily create this. So how you create this is you might have some other tool, but for most people, they might not have a tool. So they can just do this within NetSuite. Go to Documents, Templates, Email Templates, New. This is the role you must have, List Email Template Permission. And if you don't, so many of the roles that I've looked at have that already for my clients. But if you don't have that, you can ask the administrator if you can have that, because that would be very helpful for this. So what I did in this case is I just took that prior text that I put in that looked like it should have word wrapped but didn't, and pasted it in here. And then I used the formatting tools and I bolded this, Margie Cominos. So notice on these WYSIWYG tools, you can bold, italicize, underline, and then you've got font and everything like that. But you can also you also have the option to have images, to insert images and the such like that. So from here, what you want to do is you want to enter your text either from scratch or just cut and paste it. What's key here is this source code box that you see here. So this will show you your HTML code. You can, and I say leave blank because it's meaningless. I mean, you can put something in, but it's not going to matter because all you're doing is basically using this as an HTML generator for yourself. But do name this as your own signature so you can go back and modify it later. But at this point, you just want to hit the source button. And when you do that, it'll show you the HTML code that was created. And from here, you want to copy. Don't save it first, but copy it, because once you save it, then you have to go back and open it up again. So copy this, do Control A inside that box, and then you just go back to your set preferences and you paste that into the signature box. And you're going like, whoa, wait a second. I don't want that all to show. Well, it won't. It knows it's the HTML, and then it will just provide this type of a view. So that's the main part of what I wanted to show in under 5 minutes. These are the steps, so you don't have to go through all of the other slides in the deck that will be posted. And then the other thing I wanted to say, you can add an image and a link to a website. But the important thing in the image is that I recommend that you put the image in the NetSuite documents folder. And then you just copy the URL from that image and you click on the image icon in the WYSIWYG tools. And then you put under the image information, you just follow along here and it'll give you everything you need to do. And then it creates, so this source code now looks something like this instead. You see, it's getting a little bit more complex. So even if you know some basic HTML, you might not know how to do this. And then the result of this is that my email that I created now has this logo. When I clicked on the logo, it then brought this up into a new page. So that is what I wanted to share with you. I don't know if you have any questions that you want to ask now. If not, this is my contact information, and I'm happy to help answer any of the questions that might come up either now or later. So thank you very much for your time, and hopefully that was under 5 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Margie. That's a great tip for sure. I was just looking to see if you can take that same concept and put it like in an Outlook signature as well, but I don't think you can do HTML in an Outlook signature. So, but that's really cool. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to stop recording.